G'day guys and welcome to Aussie English. My objective here is to teach you guys the English spoken down under. So whether you want to speak like a fair dinkum Aussie, or you just want to understand what the flippin' hell we're on about when we're having a yarn, you've come to the right place. So sit back, grab a cuppa and enjoy Aussie English. G'day guys, welcome to this Aussie English interview episode. So this has been long awaited, for me at least. I've been collecting interviews now on the sly without you knowing about it for probably 3 months, and I've been racking my brains trying to work out how to best use these to serve you guys. Anyway, I've been running around interviewing mates, interviewing family members, and more recently finding more interesting fair dinkum Aussies in order to get on the podcast, and today is the very first episode of that. So each of these interviews is going to be put on the podcast as a whole, but it's then going to have a 5 to 10 minute section broken down and turned into a lesson that'll be added to the Aussie English classroom. So that's for you guys who are enrolled in the Aussie English classroom and you want to use this to test your Aussie skills, to test your Aussie English skills, and to upgrade all of that. It's going to come with a vocab test or quiz where you fill in the blanks in sentences with vocab from that section of interview. And it's also going to come with a listening comprehension exercise or quiz. So this is my effort to bring you more fair dinkum, true blue Aussies who have interesting jobs, lives, or simply a cool story to share on the podcast in order to expose you to more Aussie accents and vocab and everything like that. I'm sure you guys are getting used to my accent and me talking all the time. So that's the whole point. It's all in the spirit of showing you the real Australia whilst also teaching you to understand and speak Aussie English. So just a reminder before we get started, this episode's obviously going to have a longer intro than usual because it's the first of its kind. But before we get started, just a reminder that if you would like to support the Aussie English podcast, if you want to help me do what I do, pay for the equipment that I get to make the podcast, put the food on my table, pay for the electricity bills, everything like that, you can do so via my Patreon page, which you can find at www.theaussieenglishpodcast.com/support. Or you can use the link in the transcript, guys, and you can sign up from as little as $1 per month. And this all goes towards helping me bring you more content. So please consider that if you're enjoying the podcast. If you want to upgrade your English and support the podcast at the same time, the best thing out there is the Aussie English Classroom, guys. This is an online learning environment that you enroll in, you jump in there, and you can complete things like portions of this interview as lessons with quizzes, and obviously also the expression episodes, which come with a lot more learning content. It's growing every day, guys. The Aussie English Classroom is forever growing, forever expanding with more and more content. You can get in there and try it for 30 days, an entire month, for just $1 at www.theaussieenglishclassroom.com/register. Or again, you can use the link in the description. Anyway, guys, enough for the intro here. Let's get to today's guest. Today's guest is none other than Stuart Mckenzie. Stuart works at the Australia Zoo as a reptile keeper and has his own snake catching business, The Snake Catcher 24/7. This is located on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. He's been removing snakes successfully from all kinds of strange places, as you'll find out in the interview, for the last 4.5 years now. The interview had the potential to be interrupted by an urgent call from local residents needing snake catching skills, but fortunately we got through the whole thing without being interrupted. So there you go. Anyway, guys, here we go. I give you snake catcher and all-round top Aussie bloke, Stuart Mckenzie. Stuart, welcome to the Aussie English Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate your time.
So no dramas. I'm pretty stoked to be doing it. I was actually looking forward to it this week. So
no, brilliant. No, thank you so much for your time. And the interview may be cancelled during, but we'll see how we go. So you're a snake catcher up in Queensland. Most kids, when they were kids, obviously wanted to be coppers or fireys when they grew up. How on earth did you end up being a snake catcher? And was that something you always wanted to do?
Yeah, I guess from an early age, like, you know, a lot of my mates and stuff had, you know, dogs as pets and all that sort of thing. And we thought about going down that road, but I can't remember. I'm just trying to remember the first instance where we decided to, because I actually got 2 shingleback lizards, you know, a very sort of common lizard found around parts of Australia, more those sort of hotter, arid regions. But, yeah, we decided to get a pair of those, and that was my first ever pet. So that sort of started out a bit different for us, getting reptiles rather than a dog or a cat, which is pretty standard back sort of 15 years ago. And then, yeah, I guess from there it sort of grew. Every time we'd go camping, we'd go looking for lizards, and more so lizards at the start, just because I didn't really know a lot about snakes sort of as a kid. So I knew that lizards weren't dangerous, so we could go catch them, and that was fine.
At least the small ones.
Yeah, and I think it was more my parents being like, yeah, no, well, we can go, you can go grab these, because we didn't know a lot about snakes at the time. But I guess it sort of grew from there, and then I actually work at Australia Zoo as well, which is pretty cool, and I worked there full time until I sort of started my business, and then I sort of dropped back and worked there a couple of days a week and work in the reptile and croc department there. So that sort of increased my, love for reptiles and that sort of thing. And since then, I've obviously started my business. I've been doing the business now for nearly 5 years, and yeah, I absolutely love it. It's a pretty cool job.
So when did you realise that you could earn money from getting snakes out of people's houses and turn that into a career?
I guess it was probably my first year at the zoo, so probably about 5 years ago. Basically, a few of the guys who'd been around the coast for a while had their permits and stuff to catch snakes, and I sort of found out that you can get a permit to catch snakes, and you obviously have to have experience and all that sort of stuff. So I went about getting a bit of experience and being out and applying for the permit, and I finally got it. And then I sort of started my own little Facebook page, which nobody else had really done. There was a few guys around Australia doing it, but not really here on the sunny coast at the time. And so I started a little Facebook page, got a bit of a following, and sort of realised that, I knew you could always charge money for it, but I didn't realise it could ever be sort of make a living out of it, if you know what I mean. And I guess I just took it a bit more seriously than a lot of others, and did a bit of advertising, and sort of the Facebook page sort of started it all, and I work with a few other guys in the reptile industry around the coast. Did a bit of snake catching with them, and then decided to sort of do my own thing and build a website, and then just went from there. And since then, it's just gone gangbusters. And, it's gone from, I was looking at my records the other day, like records probably 4 years ago, maybe doing like 5 calls in a month to, doing 130 calls in a month now. So
Jesus,
it's definitely increased tenfold, that's for sure.
And so what's the average office day like for you?
So, for instance, today, like being Boxing Day, I wasn't expecting many. I did have one yesterday on Christmas Day. Didn't find the snake. It disappeared about 3 minutes before I got there, which was frustrating, but had to look around and couldn't find him. So the average day is probably around 4 or 5 calls a day, I reckon. So that's actual jobs. So that's jobs that I'll go out to and try and catch a snake. We could get upwards of 15, 20 actual phone calls in a day, because a lot of people call us for, just ask a question, or they might have a completely harmless snake like a tree snake or a carpet python, and they're happy for it to be there. They just want to know what it is, you know what I mean? Or they might have a blue-tongued lizard or a water dragon or something, like some sort of species of lizard in their backyard, and sort of asking questions about, do they get along with the dog? Should I get it relocated? So a lot of times we'll get calls and they just simply don't need us to come out. But in a lot of the cases, they do need us. A lot of people obviously have a fear of snakes. I think that's the biggest driver for us to come out, their fear of snakes, and just having that peace of mind knowing that it's not in the backyard anymore. Even snakes play a pretty important role in the environment, you know what I mean? They're looking after rodents. They've got their own little spot within the food chain, but unfortunately people just are petrified of them. And I can understand that because, you know, everybody's scared of something, and just so happens that snakes and spiders is another big one which people are obviously scared of. But, yeah, so your average day, 4 or 5 jobs and a heap of phone calls. So some days I'll leave home. You could get a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then, you know, might not get home and be able to eat until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon because it might be just back-to-back phone calls. So, yeah, and you could be driving all over the coast. You could get lucky and get a few close together, but usually it doesn't work like that. Usually, you know, you'll be 20 Ks down south, and then you'll have to drive 30 K up north and then down south again and in the middle. And, yeah, so I've done sort of 400, 450 Ks in a day before.
Holy moly.
So it can be quite hectic, can be quite busy, especially when it's, you know, it can be quite serious, some calls. Like if there's a big eastern brown on the move inside someone's house or something like that.
Yeah.
Which does happen. And I sort of started out by myself, and now I've got sort of a team of maybe, there's probably 10 of us who, you know, they all have full-time jobs, but I've definitely got 3 or 4 of us available every day in different areas. So that, you know, for instance, I got a phone call for Central Sunshine, a little bit south, so down Caloundra way, and then I also got a call at the same time for Caboolture, which is another 40 minutes south. And I went to the Caloundra one, and I sent one of my guys, Chris, down to the Caboolture one. So we can always offer that, you know, within sort of 20, 25 minutes, we'll have someone at your house to be able to, you know, catch the snake, hopefully, and relocate it. But as with snakes, you cannot control what they do, so...
So how does the average phone call go? If someone calls you up, are they normally in a state of panic, or only once they realise what the snake is?
Some people, it's crazy, hey, like literally complete ends of the spectrum. So some people ring me up and they're like, hey, Stu, just letting you know, I got a snake. Can you come grab it for me? Just not a fan of him. Just prefer he's not here. Or, you know, I've got small pets or something. We'd like it removed. You know, relatively calm. And then I've had phone calls where I cannot understand them because they're literally bawling their eyes out in complete hysterics. So, yeah, it can go sort of either way. Then you get the old one, you know, no offense to the older generation, but, you know, the older generation haven't sort of back in their day, you know, any snakes, you know, any good snake's a dead snake, you know what I mean? So that was the attitude back in the day, but we're obviously trying to change that now. And yeah, sometimes they can be, you know, and a lot of people don't think that you have to pay for it as well.
Yeah.
It's getting better. Like when I first started out 5 years ago, like nearly every phone call was like, oh, what, you have to pay for it? But
I'm providing a service.
Exactly. It's a professional service and we don't charge a lot. You know what I mean? It's not a lot to come out and, you know, potentially relocate something that might be a bit of a hazard.
And do the people, when they do have snakes that are like eastern browns, which are one of Australia's deadliest or most dangerous snakes, do they often realise the gravity of like having that in the house before they call you, or only afterwards do they clue in and say, okay?
Sometime. So most of the time it's an overreaction, I'd say. So people think they've got a brown snake, but it's actually when I get there, it's a tree snake and it's completely harmless.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I prefer people to be like that.
Yeah.
But you get the occasional one. For instance, the other night I got one. It was actually about 10 minutes away, and the guys had rang me earlier in the afternoon, and they'd shooed this little snake out, thinking they're like, oh yeah, I think it's just a tree snake, and they shoot it out with a broom.
Yeah.
Got it outside, and then it turned up again inside again. So
yeah.
I don't know how that, but they're like, oh, can you just come and get it? It's just been really painful. I rock up, and you know the guys had got no shirts on, walking around in bare feet, and I look into the pantry. And it's a 1.5 foot eastern brown snake.
Is the little brown spots on the back of the head, and you're just like...
A few markings in a couple of nights. It was actually a really pretty snake. Had some stripes and stuff on it still. But yeah, just sometimes you run into some pretty crazy circumstances. And I've caught snakes literally in every situation now that you can think of. Like just... If you point to a section of your house, you know, I've caught a snake there. They can get anywhere. Especially when they get inside, and the majority of snakes are capable climbers as well, including some of the venomous ones.
So what are some of the strangest positions you've found them in?
Well, recently I caught one in a printer, so it went behind a Christmas tree. The video sort of went pretty crazy online, but yeah, it went in behind a Christmas tree into a TV cabinet, and like no joke, actually I've got a printer here, so I lifted up this part of the printer and that wasn't there. It was in under here. Like I'm talking not a little red belly, like we're talking something that was probably 4.5 foot long.
And it was a red belly black snake.
The belly black snake, it was tucked into the printer. I actually had to pull out the section where the paper goes sort of underneath and to get him. But yeah, I've caught him on top of fridges. You know, we catch him in roofs all the time. I've caught him under couches, in couches, on beds, you know, in closets, in ovens. Ovens is actually, the oven wasn't obviously on, but it's been twice now that there's a small, it's only about an inch, maybe an inch and a half of insulation that goes around the oven. So it sort of separates the outer section, which we see, and the inner hot section. And I pulled out 2 7-foot carpet pythons out of that insulation area. Like I actually was about to accuse these people of being loony bin because I'm like, there's no way there is a snake here. They're like, no, trust me, we saw it go under the oven. It has to be there.
It didn't come out.
And it's not there. And then I kept looking, and here's this massive snake tucked into the side of the oven. So, yeah, some of the places are pretty crazy.
So would you consider it an overly dangerous job?
Majority of the time, like, don't get me wrong, every snake has capabilities of biting you. So whether it's non-venomous, venomous, it's going to defend itself if it feels threatened. And usually when we catch them, a snake feels threatened. So, you know, most people get to see the good side of snakes. You know, they're nice and calm, and they'll try and keep away from you as much as possible. You know what I mean? Like they're not out there to chase people. Snakes don't chase you or anything like that. You know, as soon as they see you, they're more likely to flee than, you know, start coming towards you kind of thing. So, but as a snake catcher, we're obviously doing what we would never ever encourage people to do, and that's actually going up to a snake and trying to catch it. So when a snake feels threatened, that's when we get to see their defensive behaviour. So it can be quite dangerous. I guess we've got the experience and, you know, the handling skills to be able to deal with situations. In saying that, you know, they're unpredictable, and I probably had the closest call of my life recently. It was probably about a month ago now, which it sort of threw me, and I had sort of a big think about the way I do things afterwards. Like I caught an eastern brown. He's around 5 foot long, and I should have brought my bag with me. Like the bag was there. It was about sort of 7 meters behind me, but I sort of left it back, and I sort of brought my hook with me, and I caught the snake, and then I sort of had to carry the snake by the tail, and that's how. Well, just below the cloaca is where we hold him.
Yeah.
On the body side, and yeah, I sort of had to carry him back. And as I was carrying him back, I finally got to my bag. I had to go through a fence. I had to go next to some couches and stuff. So if I had brought my bag with me, put him in straight away, it wouldn't have happened. But as I picked my bag up, he saw that movement and he shot up straight up past my hand, literally got within a centimetre of my hand.
Far out.
I just got lucky because he didn't obviously make contact. If he had have sort of headbutted my hand, then he probably would have opened his mouth and bit me. So. And
what would have happened in that case? What would have the situation had to have been, you know, escalated to?
I would have bagged him, so I would have quickly bagged him up, and then I would have basically made sure he was secure, and then that would have been within 10 seconds of it happening, and then I would have sat down and got the people to put a bandage on, you know, do all the appropriate first aid for snake bite and call an ambulance and just go through that whole process. And start crossing my fingers.
So obviously that's never happened though yet. You've never been bitten on the job, at least by a venomous snake.
Never been bitten by a venomous snake. I'm hoping to keep it that way. It's
crazy how there seems to be two different kinds of people. There's a guy, I've forgotten his name, that I remember is a professor. He's a bald dude in Queensland of venomous animals.
Brian Fry.
Yeah, and I remember him being interviewed, and I think it was him, and they said, how many times have you been bitten? And he was like, just 22. And you're just like, what? And he was like, but, you know, those were the envenomations, not the other ones. And you're just like...
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I'm hoping to keep it that way, but, you know, I guess they are very unpredictable, and you can only hope that it doesn't happen and do your best to make it not happen. But
Yeah, that's it.
So don't
So
want to jinx myself.
could you talk a bit about the types of snakes in Australia? So what sort of variation there is, and just give that a whirl.
Yeah, so here on the sunny coast, we're pretty lucky. Well, I think we're lucky. People probably don't think we're lucky who hate snakes, but we've got around probably 18 or 20 species of snake found here on the sunny coast, which including some species which are found a bit further west, and maybe their distribution just touches the Sunshine Coast. You know what I mean? But we're pretty lucky to have a fair bit of variation. So usually there's probably about 7 or 8 snakes, like the common ones that I can catch on a weekly basis, which is pretty cool. Like you go down south, the guys in Melbourne and Adelaide and those sort of areas, and even Sydney, and a lot of the time those guys are only catching a couple of species. Like the Victorian guys catch copperheads and tiger snakes all the time, and that's about it. Maybe the odd eastern brown, a couple of pythons, but up here on the sunny coast, we're pretty lucky. We've got a massive range, and I think it's just the habitat types around here that enables there to be that many species around this area. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to catch a tiger snake because I've never caught one before. There are some tiger snakes found in little pockets around the sunny coast, but very, very hard to find. But I see some of the other guys who catch tiger snakes nearly every day. I'm like, God damn it! But I'm sure they'd love to catch some of the stuff that we catch. So
it's snake envy.
Yeah, but I guess Australia's pretty lucky. We've got a massive range of elapids, so your front fang venomous snakes. We've got a lot of snakes in the top sort of 10 to 20 world's most venomous snakes, including definitely the top sort of 4 or 5 with the inland taipan, which is found out west. You got your eastern brown snake, which I get to catch, which I'm pretty lucky to catch that. They're found a vast majority of the eastern side of Australia. You got your red bellies. They're not in the top 5, but they're obviously a pretty cool snake that everybody loves, and a very how could you say they're an obvious snake. They're like, everybody knows what a red-bellied black snake looks like. So, whereas brown snakes get confused for about another 5 or 6 species around here, just on the sunny coast. So, and then you got the coastal taipan, you got the tiger snakes and the death adders. So we've got a lot of venomous and dangerous snakes. But as I say to people, snakes are only dangerous if you let them be. So, you see a snake in the wild, you keep your distance. The snake's not dangerous. You go up to it, try and get photos, try and catch it. That's when the snake becomes dangerous. So.
That's it. Once you go for that selfie right next to it here, right? That's the no-go zone.
Exactly right. So I guess that's what we're that's why we're doing the Facebook pages. That's why we do our posts, to try and teach people to, just keep your distance and be smart about it. It's all common sense. It's like with most animals, what I mean? It's a lot of it's common sense.
So who do you find the people who do get bitten, what kind of activities are they doing that leads to them putting themselves in a position to be bitten?
It's usually people trying to catch or kill them. So that happens 90% of the time, I reckon, where someone tries to get a shovel out or tries to hit them with a stick or just tries to catch and remove them themselves. So it's, snakes can move so quickly, and if you're coming at them with a shovel, not only is it illegal to kill any native wildlife, and it's massive fines, but it's just so dangerous. Like you come at an eastern brown with a shovel, he's just going to see this big object moving towards him, and he's going to defend himself. And I think people forget how quick they can be. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to be able to chase you down or anything like that, but that strike and that initial speed is quite crazy. So
that's crazy. So
that's the main way. Yeah, like the odd person will get bitten accidentally, like gardening in their, picking some weeds out or putting their hand into a bush, and then the snake sees movement and all they think is a rat or something, and that's the reason they bite. But majority of the time it's when people are trying to catch or kill a snake. So.
And can you tell us the difference between the different kinds of Australian snakes, the elapids and pythons, for example?
Yeah, so we've got 3. We've got the elapids, the colubrids, and the pythons. So pythons are your egg layers, so they're all egg layers and non-venomous. Your colubrids, which is the biggest actual group or family of snakes around the world, but we've only got, I think it's 6 or 7. So Australia doesn't have many colubrids. That's like your brown tree snake, for instance, and some colubrids are venomous, some aren't. So that they're kind of like that middle ground. That's why I guess they've got the biggest, you could say, variety of snakes around the world, and they're the largest group. And then you've got your venomous front-fanged elapid snakes, which we've got plenty of those here. So I guess, we, with the pythons and that, they are quite recognisable. They usually got that big sort of busty head, and they've got that mottled blotched pattern on them. They're quite a sort of robust snake compared to a lot of your venomous stuff. I guess when it gets confusing between the three is when the snake's smaller.
Yep.
So, even pythons, for instance, when they're young and within their first couple of years, they can still remain sort of like a browny colour. They can remain brown their whole life, but usually they sort of change to a bit more greeny shades of colour and that sort of thing. But I guess, it's when the snakes are small and young is when you can when you make that sort of confusion, if that makes sense. And that's where people get sort of confused. And sometimes I know I've been doing this for a little bit now, but it sort of blows my mind sometimes when I'll go out to someone's house and they're like, I've got a brown snake, and I walk in and it's a carpet python. I'm like, how can you confuse that? But then again, if you're not someone who deals with snakes and the carpet python's got a bit of brown on him, then you're going to think it's a brown snake. And I guess that's where that confusion comes in, and that's why we don't want people to take things into their own hands and that sort of thing. And but yeah, it is pretty cool the amount of variety we have here in Australia. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy where some of the snakes can be found as well.
Yeah.
Like some of the habitats and some of the temperatures that some snakes, like you look at the fierce snake, they're way out west in that sort of clay, earth. There's just nothing, you know what I mean? Like there's just literally nothing except a few cracks in the ground, and that's where they spend majority of the time, going through the cracks looking for rodents and looking for things to eat. But you just, when you get out there, you just think that nothing could survive.
I guess that leads well into what role they have in the ecosystem. What sort of roles do most snakes sort of occupy, and why are they important?
Well, that's it. I guess you need to understand, everyone needs to understand that, there's always a food chain in every ecosystem, and without snakes, we would literally be overrun with things like rodents and smaller marsupials. Like whether the marsupials are and mammals and stuff are native, they're still part of that food chain, and I guess snakes play that role, especially with your rodents. You know what I mean? People can have serious rodent issues, especially on farms and bushland areas. I guess because it's just one of those things where, and even frog species. So you obviously have a lot of native frogs, and frogs have been, the cane toads obviously had a massive effect on native frog species, even snake species and goanna species, just because anything that eats them will basically die, except the keelback. Pretty cool. But yeah, they're kind of in that middle zone in the food chain, which is also, it's as important as the apex predator, or as important as the bottom of the food chain. You need that. You need those levels in that food chain, and the snakes need to be around, because snakes feed other animals as well. Kookaburras and different birds will prey on snakes, and I guess it's just that position that they hold in the ecosystem. If they were to go out, then rodent numbers would go through the roof, which is going to affect crops. It's going to affect the whole habitat. When you get little rodents like that taking over a habitat, it's just, it's not good at all. So
that's it. Anytime it gets out of balance.
Well, that's it. It's all about balance and that sort of thing. So I guess you just have to make sure that. And the problem is when us humans as well are playing a pretty poor impact on them as well, especially here. I see it on the coast all the time. People always ask me, why are snakes coming into people's homes? Why are we seeing them so often? I guess, the amount of infrastructure and the amount of buildings that are, getting built and bushland areas getting knocked down these days is crazy. You hear about it on the TV all the time, and I realise that, humans need somewhere to live and all this sort of stuff, but we're still knocking down all this habitat, which, not just snakes, hundreds of species of animals, not just reptiles, we're talking mammals, birds, everything. They rely on that habitat. And when that's gone, then where are they going to go? You know what I mean? And I guess the main reason why they're seen around homes is because, one, there's rodents, rodents are attracted to homes due to scraps or places to hide, and chicken coops, any pets that, you leave out feed for, that's going to attract rodents. Then we've got skinks and frogs and insects, obviously attracted to the light. That's why the geckos come try and eat the insects, and the frogs come because there's either a water source or to the light as well to try and grab some insects. And this is all the things that snakes eat. So that's another main reason why snakes are sort of found around the sunny coast and around homes. Not even just the sunny coast, around the whole of Australia, around homes. So.
Yeah. So what advice would you have for someone who has come from overseas and wants to see snakes? What advice would you have for them if they came straight to you and said, what's the best and safest way to see snakes in Australia?
I always recommend, if people have got a fear of snakes and want to sort of overcome that, then go to a zoo or go to an animal, or whether it's a sanctuary or a little, park or whatever, where you can go and actually hold a snake. That's always a good start, where you can go hold a snake in a controlled environment where it's safe to do so. Like, don't go out in the bush and try and grab a snake and just put it around your shoulders, because, who knows what it is. And even the pythons, which have they're most of the time, probably 9 out of 10 pythons are really well behaved. But if you get that bad one, he's going to try and bite your face off. So I guess it's all about getting that, being able to experience wildlife and experience snakes in a safe and controlled environment. And if you want to go looking for snakes, most of the time in Australia, it's as easy as going for a bushwalk. You have to obviously time certain times of the day, sort of morning and afternoons, and weather conditions are going to affect it. Time of year is going to affect it. Even the moon sometimes affect it. You know what I mean? Like I'll often go herping with some of my, reptile mates, and we'll go out at night time and go have a look for some snakes on the move at night. But if there's a full moon out, then you usually don't see them. So there's a heap of stuff that sort of affects snakes. And I guess if you're going to go out looking for snakes, you need to be prepared to give them some space. Like, not be one of those people who, as soon as you see it, you're going to go try and catch it and photograph it all. You need to, I guess that's with all wildlife. If you want to go out looking for it, you just got to respect it. I guess respect is a big thing when it comes to snakes. You just got to learn to respect them, give them the respect they deserve. But everybody can still enjoy them and watch them in the wild, because even I get a kick out of seeing a snake in the wild. It's kind of, catching snakes for people is not really, it doesn't feel to me like seeing them in the wild. I guess for other people, when a snake rocks up in their backyard, that is. But, when I'm out bushwalking, I'll go for a walk with my wife or take the dog for a walk, and we see a snake go across the path, I'm like, damn, that's pretty awesome. You know what I mean? Seeing a snake in the wild like that. People probably think that's a bit funny, the fact that I catch them every day, but this is my job, and that doesn't seem like seeing snakes in the wild to me. But when we actually go out looking for them and you see one on the move in the bush or whatever, it's just like, yeah, that's pretty cool. But even I, most of the time, well, all the time basically, if I see one in the wild, I'll just keep my distance. And there's no point myself putting myself in danger, like picking up a venomous snake when I don't need to. You know what I mean? And I don't want to encourage that either. So,
2 more questions, then we can finish up.
Yes.
What advice would you have for any unfortunate tourist or Australian alike who does happen to be bitten, whether it's a python or a venomous snake? I assume they're not going to know in the moment. What would you say they should do, and what would you say they should potentially carry with them?
Yeah, so I guess if anybody takes away any information from this chat, and this is probably the most important thing, because with snakebite, applying or doing the appropriate first aid can literally be the difference between life and death. Like, it literally can. And if you were to get bitten by a snake anywhere, say on the arm or leg, it has been changing over the years. But if you were to get bitten anywhere on the arm or leg, I'm just going to try and set this up. So just say I get bitten on the hand. What I'm going to do is, initially, you're obviously going to make sure the danger's gone. So if you're in your backyard and you've been bitten by a snake and the snake's still on the move in the backyard, I'd probably quickly go inside and sit down in the cool on the couch and relax, and then immediately have one person calling the ambulance and another person applying a first aid bandage. So what you want to do, the latest thing that I've heard, it used to be wrap a whole bandage around the bite side, then wrap another one up the arm. The latest information that I've been given is that just say you get bitten anywhere on the arm, you start down the end, you wrap all the way to the top, and then all the way to the bottom. So what you want to do is you want to slow down the flow of blood through the lymphatic system. So lymphatic system is just under the skin, and you obviously don't want the venom traveling all the way up to your lymph nodes, because that's when it's going to get converted sort of into the bloodstream, and that's when you're going to be in a bit of strife. So you want to just apply pressure. If you don't have I always recommend every Australian home has a couple of, snake bite bandages in their home. And I actually joined up with a company recently, and I sell them to people and often give them away as well to people when I go and catch snakes for, because I always ask the question, do you have a snake bite bandage, or do you just have a bandage in general? It doesn't have to be a specific snake bite one, just a normal crepe or elastic bandage or whatever they're called. And just apply that to the bite site, and then you're going to remain calm. And by this time, someone's already rang the ambulance, and you're going to always wait for the ambulance to come to you. I guess sometimes there's probably, I don't like to ever sort of encourage people going to the ambulance, but I guess if you're in a place of no service, or you ring the ambulance and they recommend get the person who's bitten to lay down as calm as possible in the back of the car, and we'll meet you somewhere. Like, this is if you're 3 or 2 hours literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But, here on the sunny coast, or any built-up area really along the east coast, or majority of towns and stuff around Australia is going to have access to an ambulance pretty quickly. So it's always best to just remain calm, stay seated or lie down or whatever is a comfortable position for you, and wait for the help to arrive. And then that's when they'll pick you up, take you back to the hospital, do some tests, and they'll assess your condition and basically monitor you for 12 to 24 hours. If you ever rock up to, I know every situation is different, but if you ever get to the hospital and after 3 hours they're like, nah, you're all good, we'll let you go, stay there.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of it happening often, but I've had a few times where a few things have gone on where they've said, yeah, no, you're all good to go, but I've heard of reactions of snake bite happening 6 hours after the bite, you know what I mean? Or, never get the bandage taken off until you're at hospital, or until you've had tests done, you know what I mean? Like, needs to stay on there, because people have died because a bandage has been removed too quickly, or little mistakes like that. And always mark the bite site too, that way on the bandage, that way they can sort of cut into the bandage just on around that bite site, and then take a swab to work out what it is, what kind of snake it was. So it's just so important. It's something you just got to take very seriously. You know what I mean? A lot of snake bites are dry bites, so that's basically when a snake will bite and won't envenomate. And they'll do that a lot, because if you think about producing venom for a snake takes a lot of energy, and they're not necessarily going to want to use it on a human being who's 40 times their size, because they can't eat them.
Yeah.
They're usually going to use it on little mammals or little reptiles or whatever, to be able to, not only does it subdue their prey and kill them very quickly, but it also sort of helps in digestion as well. So I guess it's about, a lot of bites can be dry bites, but you just can't take that chance.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Just cannot take because the time that you think, oh no, it's a dry bite, should be right, it won't be a dry. And you just can't take that risk. So.
Far right. All right, last question. What should people do if a snake is in their house?
Yes, so if you see a snake inside your house, I would absolutely get it relocated. Now, if it's inside your house, obviously a window's been left open, or it's coming in an open door, even if it's non-venomous, I usually recommend people to just get someone out, get it relocated, especially if you don't know what it is. If it's in your backyard, I guess it's a personal choice. Even if it's a venomous snake, a lot of people on farms call me and they'll send me a picture of a massive 6-foot eastern brown. They're like, oh, we don't mind. We've brought the dogs in. He'll just move on. They're on property. The snake's going to move on. And by the time I get there, I probably won't be able to find it anyway. But it's more so when you're in suburbia and you've got a snake in your backyard cruising around, best thing to do is get everybody away from it. So remove any danger. So get the kids, the dogs, pets, all adults inside. Or if it's inside, get everybody outside. But it's always good to have someone keeping an eye on it from a distance. And I guess if it goes into an area where you can't see it, so if it goes in under the couch, keep an eye on all the areas around the couch. Don't let anybody near there until you see it move out, or even when it moves out, just keep everybody away. So I guess, if it's inside, I'd always recommend to just call someone, keep an eye on it. If it goes in a a bedroom, just lock the door. Don't worry about keeping an eye on it. If it goes in any room that you can isolate, lock the door, or don't have to lock it, but shut the door, put a towel under the door so it can't get back out underneath the door, and then we'll worry about it when we get there. The snake catcher can just open the door and go through everything. That's not a drama. It's probably safer than someone standing in a room, which can be quite a tight space, and having to worry about a snake on the move. But when it's outside, it's kind of personal preference, but I always recommend if there's pets involved and it's a venomous snake or a big python, just to get it relocated. The snakes are never harmed. We just pick them up and we relocate them to bushland within sort of 4 or 5 kilometres according to our permit. And we always pick a good spot to release them, and where we know that they're going to be able to still thrive and, have access to food and water and shelter. So.
Oh, brilliant. Stuart Mckenzie, snake catcher, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Mate, no worries. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
How can people find you, especially if they need this snake catching help up in Sunshine Coast in Queensland?
Yeah, so my business is called The Snake Catcher 24/7. So if you're not on the sunny coast, I guess it's either a matter of just Googling snake catchers for your area or going on Facebook. A lot of snake catchers have Facebook. But yeah, if you're on the sunny coast, it's The Snake Catcher 24/7. And my phone number is 0408 545 440. And like I said, 24 hours a day. If you have a snake at 3 o'clock in the morning, do not hesitate to call your local snake catcher, because we're all 24/7, even though it's hard to get up sometimes at 3 o'clock to catch a snake. We're happy to do it because it's what we do. So.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, mate. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks, mate.
See you guys. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Stuart Mckenzie, snake catcher. Remember, if you would like his services, if you guys live in the Sunshine Coast area in Queensland, his phone number is 040 854 5440. He's on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you have a snake in your house and you need it removed, give him a call. So I hope you enjoy this episode. There's loads of Aussie slang, expressions, vocab. He's got a great accent. And remember, if you would like to support the podcast and help me bring you more interviews like this, you can do so via my Patreon page. The link will be in the transcript. And if you would like to support the podcast whilst learning Australian English and upgrading your English, make sure you get into the Aussie English classroom and finish today's 5 to 10 minute segment as the exercises that I've created for you in there. So that's designed to teach you Australian English even faster. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, guys.